When Barack Obama ran for president in 2008, hedge fund managers and others in the investment sector were the largest donation source for his campaign. But in the time since he's been in the White House, the president's and Democrats' supports from hedge fund managers and many in Wall Street has gradually but dramatically dwindled. Here to discuss this shift in political allegiance are my freedom fighters, Fox Business anchor and my colleague Lori Rothman, Suffolk University economics professor Benjamin Powell, and radio host and Freedom Watch regular Nancy Skinner. Lori, to you first. Is Wall Street disenchanted with him? Are the super rich on Wall Street, the people that run these unbelievable hedge funds where they make $1 billion a year, are they disenchanted? Or is all of the business community disenchanted?
I would say all of the business community is disenchanted. Small business all the way up to the big corporations, the hedge funds, the private equity managers. It dates back to toward the end of the 2008 election, you know, the fat cat bankers and all the criticism, to the auto bailouts, and then really to the tax structure. You know, the last 3 to 4 years in Congress, it was shot down, this carried interest tax at 15%. They're pushing to make that up to more the ordinary income tax rate at 35%, and they're very, especially in the private equity industry, very resentful of that. Nancy,
the president has cozied up to some major titans in Wall Street. Jeff Immelt, who runs General Electric, and Jamie Dimon, who runs J.P. Morgan Chase. I don't know if those two people are deserting him, but people similarly situated, either lifelong Democrats or people that supported him last time, are now overtly saying, who's the Republican? I want to contribute to him. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, I think there is a breakdown. Wall Street, in 2008, they knew that they were in a crisis, and they knew they were going to have a bailout. And it seemed much more likely that President Obama would do the responsible thing and actually go through the bailout. But he also said, I'm going to reform it so it never happens again. So they gave him lots of money because they knew they needed the bailout. Now he's passing reform so it never happens again. Now that's not what they want. They want to gamble with taxpayer dollars. So now they're switching over. The car companies love him. It literally saved an entire industry that is growing at new models. So you can't lump in, as Lori did, saying all businesses don't like Obama. We love him here.
All right, I get the argument. And I understand why at least General Motors likes him, because the federal government owned about 80% of it until a little bit of the stock was sold back. Ben, is there any intellectual honesty here, or is it the titans of industry just jumping on the bandwagon that they think will give them the most corporate welfare?
I don't think we should ever expect intellectual honesty in politics from either the donors or the candidates. But amazingly, I do agree with Nancy, actually, for once on the show here, where it's not industry in general that doesn't like Obama. But and I think this is a general point about Republicans and Democrats. There's not a fundamental difference, at least within the party leadership, of being big government or small government. It's just a question of which interest groups are going to get the payouts from crony capitalism. And some of them like the payouts they get from Obama. Some like the ones that they get from Bush and Paulson.
All right.
Economic growth. Just to come back, this tax structure, this 15% on the carried interest versus the ordinary tax, 35%. Small business, they're also in that camp. They're going to face a tax increase. So, yes, I see what Nancy is saying, but I mean, the fact is it is difficult to lump all business in under there, but I mean, we're looking at a tax structure that's going to change along the entitlement steps.
Before we switch gears to whether John Boehner will be true to his values with respect to the debt ceiling, do you think Wall Street will give heavily to the Republicans this year?
You know, here's the catch, right? So now they're piling to the GOP camp, the Paul Ryan budget, right? I love how they describe it as revenue enhancement opponents of it. There's going to have to be some of that.
Torture, enhanced interrogation. All right, understood. House Speaker John Boehner wants spending cuts from the Obama administration before he's ready to support raising the debt ceiling. But given his past support for increased government spending, is the Speaker's bark worse than his bite? Nancy Skinner, what's going to happen here? Are the Republicans going to go along with the White House and reject the Tea Party and reject fiscal conservatism and say to the ghost of Barry Goldwater, we just as soon forget about you and let Barack Obama borrow another $2.7 trillion? $2.7 trillion in the next fiscal year?
If you want to call yourself a fiscal conservative, you would never tamper with this. This is like comparing the budget shutdown and the debt ceiling is like a campfire and a nuclear explosion. Because, and here's why, Judge, you have treasuries that are collateral in global transactions.
Right.
They will start hedging their bets during this, before this. They'll start moving dollars out. So, and then if it really does happen, it'll take decades. So what fiscal conservative would endanger the dollar for decades?
Got it. Ben, maybe the word conservative is the wrong word, but surely you don't agree with Nancy Skinner here. Isn't the time to stop the borrowing now? No more borrowing, not another penny, not another nickel.
The only reason Nancy can use the analogy of a campfire to a nuclear explosion is because we've been piling in the nuclear waste in the warehouse for so long. You have to stop that process, which means really cutting the spending and not just piling more on top so it can be an even bigger Chernobyl when it does blow up.
Do you think that John Boehner will cut some kind of a deal, or do you think that there will be enough Republicans who will say to John Boehner and to the president, no more borrowing, period?
You know me, Judge, we've had this
I know
before.
you very well,
I
Lori.
feel like the debt ceiling is an economic issue. It's a matter of economics. It shouldn't be political. I think the Democrats should wait till the 11th hour because I don't think they're going to have to agree to any spending cuts, which I am very sad to say.
But do you think that the government will collapse and the economy will collapse if we don't borrow more money? You reject Pat Toomey's argument that enough money comes in to pay the debts?
We need to set the stage to do these long-term deficit reductions. Nancy's actually shaking her head. Do you agree with me? I mean, we need to set the stage
yes,
for these
I am agreeing with you.
But Ben, do you see how insidious this debt ceiling thing is? You have solid, sound business people and liberal Democrats and big government Republicans agreeing. It seems to be it's only small government libertarians like you and I that don't want any more debt. I'll give you the last word.
But John,
I'll give you Ben the last word.
Dessert on the table.
The idea that
doesn't mean you have to
phase in the cuts. Nancy, this is mine. The idea that you have to phase in the cuts over time is ludicrous. Look what Ireland did when they faced a similar fiscal crisis in the mid-1980s. They had 116% debt to GDP. What did they do? 2 years in a row of the biggest spending cuts that they had made in their history. And by 1990, their debt was going down, economic growth was going up, and then they could cut taxes afterwards. They had a decade of great real growth before they screwed things up this last decade.
And now they're a mess. And now Ireland is a mess.
Listen, I agree with everything that Ben said, but I don't think the Republicans will stick to their guns. I've been asking every member of Congress who comes on here to swear not to raise the debt ceiling, and they've all gone along with me.
It shouldn't be a political pawn. The debt ceiling is economics.
We'll see how they vote. Nancy Skinner, Benjamin Powell, Lori Roth,